Okay, Zok the Heilige Gemara at the bottom of Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Beis, third line from the bottom. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yosy ben Kisma, Gedoydel Legima, great is Legima feeding another Yid. She Herchika Shtei Mishpachas Mi Yisrael. It pushed away two members of our family. Shenemar regarding Ammon and Moab al Dvar Asher Lo Kidmu Eschem Alechem Uvamayim. Rabbi Yochanan Didei Amar. Mirachekes is a craving that pushes away people who are close to you, which again is referring to Ammon and Moab. Mukareves is a choikim. We will see in the Gemara in a minute what it means. Umalemes einayim in Rishoyim. Someone who does achnosas orchem, even if he's a Rasha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks away, he doesn't notice. He's a Veris. Umash Rishchina al Nevi'ei Baal. It even causes Nevi'ei Baal, Nevi'ei Sheker to have Ashuras Ashchina. So let's see what these five things mean. Mirachek as a kroivim. How is it marachik as a kroivim? Zok Gemara on Kuf Dalet Amud Aleph, which is today's daf. Me Amoy Numoyav, like we learned by Amoy Numoyav. Umekarevis as a rechaykim mi Yisrael. That we learn from Yisrael. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Bischar Kir'eno Lo B'Yochal Lochem Vibalt the Yisroi told his daughters, invite Moshe in, let's have lunch together. Zachu b'nei bana v'yashvu b'lishkas hagozos. So I asked yesterday, I didn't understand. First of all, he did it because he wanted it for an Adam. He had very much ulterior motives. But you see, God Lagim, even under those conditions, it's great. The second question I asked, I don't understand. This is like the story with the lady and the doctor, right? There was a lady who was the mother of the president, the very first Jewish president. She's there by the inauguration. She's so excited. Her son's the president, and she's sitting there in the front row. Her son's the president, and she leans over to the guy near and says, my other son's a doctor. So his son-in-law was Moshe Rabbeinu. Like, what more can you ask for? And we're saying the greatness is that he had an anical of delicious gazes. Like his son-in-law was Moshe Rabbeinu. But I think if it's a blood relative, if it's your anical, comes from you, that's the schar. Moshe Rabbeinu is that secret given there. It's not his. He got lucky. He got lucky that Moshe was a fugitive. One day Moshe wouldn't have looked at him. I don't know. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Gavaltic. So the pasuk says as follows: Shnemar, the I think this is in Divrei Hayam. It's in Divrei Hayam. It's listing off all of the mishpachas of Klal Yisrael, and it said there there was a mishpacha of Rabbanim, Yosy Yavitz. They lived in the city of Yavitz. I think the Chassid Yavitz is also, he's the Chassid from Yavitz. Who were the family names? Teratim, Shematim, Sukkasim. Who were these three families? Hema Hakinim, they were the Kinim. Haboyim Mechemas Avi Beis Rechev. They came from Chemes, the father of Beis Rechev. So we know that these families were Rabbanim, they were on the Sanhedrin. Now we have to see how you know that these have anything to do with the descendants of Yisrael. They came from Yericho el Bnei as Bnei Yehuda, Midbar Yehuda, Asher B'Negev, Ared Vayelech Vayeshev Hasam. So you see that Yisrael was referred to as Bnei Keni, or Yisrael was referred to as Keni. Hence, his family is Bnei Keni, and amongst them was the Mishpacha Seifrim. So you see that Yisrael had Einiklach that were Talmidei Chachamim, that were Dayanim on the Sanhedrin. What about the feature that Legima has, Umalemes Einayim in Rishoyim? It makes Hashem look away from Rishoyim. That's Mimicha. As we learned yesterday, the two pillars of smoke were going up to Shemayim. One from the Mishkan, a Heilige smoke. One from Pesel Micha, they even mixed together. And the Malachim wanted to be Doicha Micha. And we had a shayla that means pushing the smoke away or killing Micha. And Hashem said, leave him alone. He feeds people. Umash Shchina al Nevi'ei Baal. And that's Mechaverei Shel Adu Hanavi. Now, if you remember Adu Hanavi, this is his second appearance here in Masechah Sanhedrin. When the Gemara was discussing that a Navi is Chayiv Misa, if he doesn't listen to his own Nevuah, who's at the top of the Manam of the days, Adu Hanavi was the Navi who didn't listen to his own nevuah. He was given a nevuah not to go or eat with the Nevi'ah Abal. And at first he listened, and then the second Navi that encountered him and invited him to join him in a meal, he listened to, and he had a terrible death. I think he was torn apart by a lion. He was sitting and dining with the second Navi Sheker that approached him. So Rashi explains what happened. Rashi says, the Adu Hanavi nisnabe is gone. It's already a done deal. Tichsev v'hine ish v'elikim b'am Yehuda v'yomer mizbeach umefarish b'seidu olam da'inu Adu Hanavi. That was Adu Hanavi. And then the Ba Navi Sheker, and then a Navi Sheker came v'hit eyu la'adu and fooled Adu v'yeshiva lebeisel and brought him to Beisel and made him be over on his own nevuah v'havirei al mitzvahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But rather he did go back and he ate with this Navi Sheker. This Navi Sheker gave food to Adu. It was under very bad circumstances. He was taking him to go to Beisel and violate his own nevuah. Nevertheless, it was so powerful that he gave food to Adu Navi. Shor shalav shchina shenemar vayidvar Hashem el ish hanavi asher shiva la'achilo yatzlai. So you see, the Navi Sheker received nevuah. Why? Because he was feeding somebody. This is even a bigger chiddush. He was. It's not that he's a Navi Sheker and as a different deed he fed somebody. His feeding somebody was in and of itself an issur because he was luring him to come to Beisel, which is specifically what it was also for him to do. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he gave to eat. He fed another Yid. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. And then it says, Ushigasa Oila Zodai. What does that mean? So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Ilmale, Hilveyu, Yohanan son of David. Now, not providing somebody with food when you're supposed to will lead to terrible virus, because it says Ilmale Hilveyu, Yohanan son of David. We fortunately didn't read the Haftarah of Macha Chodesh this week, even though it was Macha Chodesh. Chodesh was on Sunday, is because we had Parshas Chodesh. Moti, did you tell over the story with the Bar Mitzvah? Here's what the story with the Bar Mitzvah. There was a boy who, I guess he struggled, and his father wanted he should lay in the Haftarah for his Bar Mitzvah. So like a year and a half before, they were preparing so that his son will know the Haftarah beautifully and perfectly in time for his Bar Mitzvah. And a couple of weeks before, he was speaking to a friend of his, and he was talking about how he was preparing his son. His friend said, this week is Parshas HaChodesh. You got the wrong Haftarah. And he panicked. He didn't know what to do. There's no way he would have been able to, in such a short period of time, teach his son a different Haftarah, so he was stuck. So they went to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. How did he find out about it? Someone went to him. And he said, I'm paskening in that shul this week, we say Macha Chodesh. And when the Olim came to shul, Shlomo Zalman lived maybe a 45-minute walk away from the shul. The Olim came to shul in the morning. He was sitting there in the pews waiting for the minyan, and he says, we're late, Macha Chodesh. And the Bacha went Macha Chodesh, and he did a beautiful job. I'm sorry? I don't know if he ever knew. Listen, if it would have been me, if Shlomo Zalman would say, day Shabbos line finished. So Malay very young son of David. Stay kickers lechem. If he would have given, because remember the story with the arrow, if the arrow's this way, you run away. But he didn't say, okay, the arrow's the wrong way, I gotta run away, here's food. He said goodbye. If he would have given them food, merely stay kickers lechem, he wouldn't have been starving David. What happened when David was starving? He went to Novi Arkayanim and he asked him for food. And that led to Shaul killing Novi Arkayanim, which led to the downfall of Shaul, which led to the death of Shaul and his children. So if it wasn't for that, Loinerga Novi Arkayanim, Nitra Doyek Adoimi, because Doyek Adoimi was the one who was the catalyst to killing Novi Arkayanim. I think he told Shaul to kill Novi Arkayanim. Loinerg Shaul, and therefore Shaul wouldn't have been killed. Ushloishes Bonav and his 3 children wouldn't have been killed. Umipnema loy manu as Achaz. Now, Achaz was not such a big tzaddik. He was a huge Rosh, we learned, right? So how come he's not listed as an additional king who doesn't have a chelak in Olam Haba? He was protected. His father was a great tzaddik, and his son was a great tzaddik. Ben Yosam lechizkiyo. So even though he was bad, he was sandwiched, he was safe. There's something called the sandwich generation, right? The people have to take care of their parents and their children. In this case, he usurped off his father and off his son, and through that he became saved. Because he had embarrassment, he was embarrassed, he was shy from Mishayo, meaning even though he was a Rasha, but as he couldn't face the Navi, so it showed a certain level of humility. It wasn't begaiva. Second. Zok to Gemara weiter. How do you know that? Shenemar Vayoyim Hashem Yishayo. Because Baruch Hu told the Navi, say no lekras achos, you go and greet achos. Ata you v'shar Yoshuv b'necha, and the rest of the people, Zok Rashi, that you were able to influence to come back to Hashem. That's where Shuvi Silver got his name from. Shar Yoshuv. That's what his name is. Do you know that? Shuvi Silver's name is Shar Yoshuv because he was born in the week that they laid this Haftarah. Yeah. So that's where he got his name from. Bincha. El Kitzei Ta'alas Habrech Al Yonya, to the hill where the stream is. El Mesilas Sedei Koives, to the path of the Sedei Koives. Koives means a washer. In fact, my Koives, what is this referring to? Ikad Amri Shinu Lapei V'Chalaf, that Melech Achaz was humiliated from the Navi. He was embarrassed because of his Averis. So Rashi is a kavish espanov. He covered his face. Volume is bayish b'pnei Yeshayo. He was embarrassed. Ikad Amri Uchlu the Katri Sofach Hareshi. He took a keli that used to have holes in it that would fill with water. It would look like a garden sprinkling can. Most people have at home a sprinkling can to water their flowers. He took such a keli and put it over his head because he was embarrassed. He didn't want Yeshai to see him. V'cholav. So since he had that humility, that he was embarrassed from the Navi, because of that, he didn't make it to the Mishnah. He didn't make it to the Schindler's List. But at the end of the day, it's never mind not making the list. He had a chelik le'mabah. Mipnema lo'imanu is Amon. Amon we don't chase. There was also a pretty bad guy. Mipnei kavoidoi shel Yoshio, because of the cover of Yoshio, and Rashi says, I'm sorry, it was his son. That's right. It was Yoshio's son. Menashe was the son of Chizkiyo, so maybe Menashe also should have been protected by his father. So Yoshio was the father of Amon. What? No, I'm sorry. Yoshio was the son of Amon. Because bra Mizaki Abba, the son could protect the father. So therefore, Yeshayo, who is the son of Amon, will protect Amon. But Abba loy Mizaki bra. But the fact that Chizkiyo was a tzaddik will not help Menashe, his son. How do you know it works that way? Yichud doesn't work. Tichsiv ve'ein miyadi matzil. The pasuk says, "You can't save yourself from me," which means ein Avram matzil as Yishmael. Avram can't save Yishmael, even though Avram was a great tzaddik. And Yitzchak matzil as Esav, and Yitzchak can't save Esav. Zokt Gemara hashto the asas lahachi. Now that you're saying that a son can protect the father, lahachi achaz nami lo imni. Now we don't have to say that achaz was saved because he was sandwiched in between two tzaddikim. You could say because of his son, mishum kvodesh shel Chizkiyo, because his son was a big tzaddik. Yaakov was oisketzeichid in how bad he was. Right? Remember, he said nobody knows how to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu angry like I do, and he had special tattoos in very special places. Right? So tomorrow, Mishum Rab Chia Bar Avuya, the Rab Chia Bar Avuya, Ksiv, and we had this again. It's coming full circle. We had this again at the beginning of the Masechta. Ksiv al Gulgalta shel Yehoyakim, on the skull of the Yehoyakim, it said the words Zois, this, the Oida Cheres, and another thing. And the Gemara relates the whole story all over again. We don't even have to remember the story because the Gemara spoon feeds it with us. Skena de Predo, the grandfather of Predo, Ashkach Gulgalto, he found on the floor rolling around, he found a skull. It was rolling around in the gates of Yerushalayim. It said on the skull, Zois v'oida cheres. So you see a skull, you see a bone, you call Ashra Kadisha, right away, cover. They buried it. But V'layikbra, it popped out of the ground. It would not allow itself to remain buried. Cover again, V'layikbra. After 2 times, Omar, he said, now I know what this is. I wouldn't have been able to figure it out. But the Predo obviously, the Predo obviously knew Navi, and he obviously knew that what this was. It must be Gulgalto Shol Yehoyakim. This must be the skull of Yehoyakim. T'chsiv Bey Kavuras Chamor Yikaver. The Navi said to Yehoyakim, "You will be buried like a donkey, strewn on the ground." And that's exactly what happened. His skull was just rolling around on the ground. Omar, so he said, Malkahu, this must be a king. Because he knows Yehoyakim was a king. It's not appropriate that it should be rolling around in the mud. Even though he wasn't such a big tzaddik, of course, but Aval Pigin is Farta Melech. The Karcha B'Shira, he wrapped it up in some type of shemata. V'oisva b'sifta, and he put it in the attic. What happened was, it was before Pesach, and his wife was Pesach cleaning, and she said, "What is this over here?" And she opens it up, and she goes, "Ah, there's a skull here." Because he said, "Visu Savra." She thought, "Oh, I know whose skull this is. This is my husband's first love. Ha the itza kamaisa hava. This must be of his first wife. The loy kamanashala. He can't take himself away from her. That's all he's thinking of. Like Hordis. He put his wife in honey and preserved her. So what did she do? She had the oven fired up to bake matzahs anyway. So she said, "You know what? She threw it into the oven and she burnt it to death. Not only would he not have a proper kfura, the oidacheres, to add insult to injury, his skull was burnt to ashes. Talk more about the Tanya. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. B'shul atoiv beinecha asisi. Who said atoiv beinecha asisi? Because of that, he got ma'ois. B'shul ma'ois nochrim ochru al shulchanoi. So let's have a look at Rashi. Zok heilige Rashi. The common nasisba v'oidacheres te'asaba. 1 second. No, here it is. B'shvil Chizkiah. Chizkiah pat himself on the back. He patted himself on the back. The Omar Atoy Beinecha Sisi. He said, I did good. This is when he was davening, I believe, that he should have a refuah from the machlos that he had. So that was Gorim Loi. Since he did that avla, it caused him to do another avla. So Omar Ma'ois Ki Ella Beis Hashem Sheshal Ois Makadosh Baruch Hu. When the Navi came and said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makabel your tefillah, and therefore you're going to get healed, he said, I want an ois. That was also an avla. Shavera Gerera Shavera. The fact that he pat himself on the back with a toy benecha sisi, that led him to ask for an ois from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he would get better. And Vibati asked for an ois. Remember, the story went that after he got better, it was such a big nace, and that day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lengthened the day by 10 hours, the same 10 hours that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the sound down early. When did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring the sound down early? He had the 10 hours that Hashem took away, he now gave back. Remember we had that? I don't remember why the sun went down early, but this was the 10 hours that came back, and all of the malachim of the whole world knew, hey, what's going on? And they all knew it was because of Yechezkiel, and that's why they wanted to bring him presents. So when they came to visit him, he sat down and fed them. So therefore, Nochrim al Shulchanoi, Oisam Shesholach Loi, Merudach Balad, and Merudach Balad sent them gifts. Svarim U'Minchal Yadam. So the shluchim that were sent by Merudach Balad to visit him, he fed them. So one thing led to the next. So let's see. So even he's supposed to Achnas not to Rishoyim. So let's have a look now inside the Gemara. Dr. Gemara. B'shvil hatoy b'necha sisi, we had ma'ois. B'shvil ma'ois, nochem achur al shulchan. B'shvil shenochem achur shulchanoi, garam galos levanav. And because he had them come eat by him, that caused that his children should go into goals. This is a right to Chizkiah. From Chizkiah, the Tana said something about Chizkiah, the king. Yom Chizkiah. If you invite a goy to your house to entertain, and you serve him, that causes that your children should go into golos. What did the Navi? What did the Shluchim tell him? The Navi told him, from your children, he told Chizkiah Melech, your children are Eniglach. Remember, it was referring to Chagai Zechariah Malachi. Yichu, they're going to take while you shrisim beichal melech will be shrisim. Remember, we had two pshatim. If shrisim means shrisim mamish, or if it means because avodah zarah was nisaris b'yameim, right? We had two pshatim there. The how you shrisim beichal melech bavel. So v'yismach aleim Chizkiah. Chizkiah was happy to see them. Yarim. So this is going back to when the king's messengers came. He was very happy to greet them, to host him. So Vayarim, he gave him a tour of his whole palace. Vayarim, as base nichsa, and as a kesev, as a zov, he showed them his oitris of kesev and zov, as abasomim, as Hashem and Atoy. He gave him literally the royal tour. Omarav, my base nichsa, what does it mean he showed him base nichsa? It means ishtoi hishkas aleim. His wife, the queen herself, was serving these guests. Ushmul Amar, Beis Kenazov here it means he showed them and shared them his riches. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Zin Oichel Zin here it was armor-piercing bullets that he showed them. And if you remember, we had the whole story that when Uzradin came to take down the Chaimish Yushalayim, he used up all his armor-piercing bullets on the first door, and he couldn't even do it. Then the last bullet, he asked Hashem, am I supposed to go away? And Hashem said, this will work. Remember, he didn't even use the point of the bullet. He used the other side, and the door just fell down because it was the time that was Nigzera. It's grating on my head. The 10 hours that HaKadosh Baruch Hu added to the days of Chizkiah, why did he take them away earlier? Why did Hashem make the sun set earlier? Was that by Yaakov Avinu? When he came to Beis-El? Yeah, I think it was by Yaakov Avinu. That's when he took away the 10 hours. Dr. Mura. Okay, I can't remember.
Wasn't that Yeshua? Were you talking about Yeshua's?
Yeshua. What was the story over there?
He made the sun stop because he had to win the battle. He wasn't.
No, he lengthened the day. I'm talking about a time where Hashem made it dark. Oh no, it was when Achaz died. When Achaz died, Hashem made the sunset right away, so they shouldn't have time to make any type of elaborate levaya. That's what it was for. Yeah, now I remember. Dr. Gemara, Eicha Yoshva Bodad. Now we're darshaning the Megillas Eicha. Eicha Yoshva. So I never noticed this, but do you know that the Prakim and Eicha are all according to the Aleph base? Do you know that? Did you ever notice that? Anybody? I never noticed it until yesterday. But the Gemara is going to comment on that. Eicha Yoshva Bodad. Amar Rava Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Mipnei ma loku Yisrael be'Eicha. Why did Klal Yisrael get punished with Eicha? If they should avru al shloisham v'sheish kriso yishabetayr. They violated the Yisurim that give somebody courage. Eicha, if you take the Yud out, is the gematria of 36. I'm sorry, Eicha with the Yud is 36 because Yud and Chav is 30 and the Aleph and Ney is 6. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, if they ma'aloku ba'Aleph base, why is it that Eicha is in the order of the Aleph base? If they should avru al Torah, shenitna be Aleph base. Torah was given with the language of Aleph base, the 22 letters of the Aleph base. Yashva Badad, the city sat alone and forlorn. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ani Amarti, I said, V'yishkain Yisrael betach Badad and Yaakov, Eretz Dagon v'Siroish, and Avshamayav Yarfutol. They're going to have every bracha. They'll sit in a fortified city with plenty of nourishment. Achshav Yibadad Moshav. Now they're going to be alone. Then the pasuk says, Ha'ira Basiyah, Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shahayu Masin Ktana. What do you mean? The ear had a lot of people. It means they created shidduchim that would lead to many more pregnancies and many more Yiddish kinderlach being born. How did they do that? Shahayu Masin Ktana Lagadol. The Nasi project would have loved this Gemara. Shahayu Masin Ktana Lagadol. They would have Now, it doesn't mean a minor. It means a 17-year-old girl, an 18-year-old girl who's ready to get married. She would have married a middle-aged guy. Ugedoyla lakatan. And if there was a 22-year-old girl, she would marry a 20-year-old boy. What impact does that have on having more children? Because when a person reaches puberty, yes, they can have children, but they're not as developed to have as many children as possible. So therefore, if we would have allowed a katan to marry a ktana, they wouldn't have had as many children. But by making sure that one member of the match is very matured and developed, that would lead to more pregnancies and more babies being born. Today, Shiyula and Banim Harbe. Haisal Kalmana. The city of Yerushalayim was like an almana. Amar B'Yehuda Amarav, Kalmana v'loy Kalmana mamish. Not like mamish like an almana. Rather, an almana, her husband is never coming back. But by Klal Yisrael, when we went into Golos, Eloki Isha Shalach Baila LeMedina Sayam, the Dai Toy Lachsor Eleh. Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavayachal left us because we did Averis, but we know for sure we're going to tshuva under Rebbe Shem is going to take us back. And almana doesn't have that luxury. Rabasi Goyim, so Rasi Medinois. What does that mean? Amar Rabba Mebechnon, Kol Shehin Oilchin, Nasin Sorim Ladanim. Even when they were taken as slaves, they were taken into captivity. Wherever they went, they ended up becoming the kings for their masters. And we're going to have a story to illustrate that. Tanu Rabbanan, Ma'aseh b'shnei b'nei Adam, shenoshvu b'Har Carmel. 2 Yidden were captured in Har Carmel. Vayeshavoi mahalach achareim. Their captor was standing behind them with a gun and said, "March!" Right? So they're marching with a gun to their back. Well, it probably wasn't a gun, but it was a weapon that was forcing them to comply. And what they did was, so one of them turns to his friend and tells him. Now, up in front of them, further up ahead on the road, not part of their party, there was a gomal. So he said, "Gomal shamalach lafnenu." You see that donkey up there? Suma ba'achas meina. I know that it's blind on one eye. That's a pretty good revelation. All he sees is a tail, right? Utauna shtei noidos, and it's loaded up with 2 jugs. Achas shel yain ba'achas shel shemen. I know one is wine. I know one is oil. And not only that, Ushnei b'nei Adam Hamagiginoisa, and the 2 people that are leading that Gomal, Echad Yisrael, one is a Jew, Echad Nach. So the Shavai hears him saying that. I'm going to show you how in heaven do you know that? Am Kishei Arif, you stubborn Jews, may ayin atem yoidim. How could you possibly know that? Amaloi, this is such kishmak, this is such a Talmudic logic story. Amaloi, it's so simple, anybody can see that. We can see there's a bag, so we can see there's grass on the ground that the animal, when it gets hungry, it puts its head down to take a bite from the grass. But look, can't you see the animals only eating from one side? Obviously, it cannot see the other side, and therefore it never bends down to take grass from the right side because it can't see the grass on the right side. He only sees grass on the left side. So isn't it obvious, right? Then he said, you know how I know? Because they're dripping. They're dripping. I see drips here on the floor. As I'm walking behind it, there's drips on the floor. But it's funny, certain drips are being absorbed into the ground, and certain drips are sort of staying on the ground and not being absorbed into the ground. So therefore, shel yain metaptev v'shekeya. The wine is not as what's the word for it? What's the word for the thickness of the mashkin? The push of the word. No, we have different grades of oil, 10W30. That's what that calls. The thickness of the oil. So the thicker the oil is, the less it's going to be absorbed into the ground. It's a simple English word. I can't believe I don't remember the word. There's a word for it. For the thickness of the oil. Anyway, so shoyai metaftev v'shekei, it gets absorbed into the ground. V'shel shemen metaftev v'tzof. It's dripping down, but it's staying on the ground. So I can tell. That's also obvious. Because anytime the Nachi needs to go to the bathroom, he just pulls his pants down and does what he has to do. Nachi niftal alerch. But Yisrael niftal toten. The Eden, they go off to the side so they shouldn't be seen. So it's a matter of tznius. Viscosity. Right? Oil is more viscous. It's thicker. Zok Gemara. So this guy, the captor, was so blown away by the wisdom of his people, of his captives, he wanted to see, is this Jew right? So Radav Acharein, he ran after the people in front of him. What's a Kedivreim? And he saw that this Jew was 100% right on all 3 points. He was blown apart. Ba v'noshkan al roishon, he went and kissed them on their heads. He was so blown away from them. Ve'avin lebeisa, he brought them to his house. V'azalem suda gedoyla, he made a big suda for them. V'yamaraked lefneim, and he was dancing in front of them. V'yomar baruch shebachar bezarei shel Avram, v'nosan lahem mechachmosa. He gebenched is the Zera Avram that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them wisdom. Uv'chol mokim shein hoilchin, and wherever they go, nasin sorin la'adoneim, they become masters to their masters, which I believe was part of what this captor said. Upatron, and he said, "You know what? I can't keep you as a mere slave. You're too wise for that. The world needs your brain power." And they ended up developing Tesla. No, I'm just kidding. Zok Gemara weiter. Bachai Sibke Balayla. Pasuk goes weiter. Shtei bechiyas halolu, these double bechiyas, what do they represent? Lama, one is for the first base of Mikdash that was Chorb, Vechad al Mikdash Sheni. Balayla, it says Bachas Balayla. What does Balayla mean? Al Iske Laila, because of Iske Laila. What does that mean? Because of the night, the faithful night. Which night was that? Shenemar, when the Meraglim came back, Vatisa Kola Eda, Vayitnos Koilim Vayipku Ha'am Balayla. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu said, Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Oisai Leil Tisha B'Av. Hoya, Amar Mekadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. You're crying now for nonsense. Atem b'chisem b'chish alchinam. Ho, shteshem vaynenen. Now this is going to become a day that's destined to cry on. So that's what it means. That fateful night. Balayla. Why by night? Because at night it's quiet, and therefore someone who cries at night, he can be heard from the distance because it's generally quiet at night. So I'm not sure. Let's see if Rashi says what's the significance of the fact that it was heard. Is that a mile? Is that a special mile that should be heard, or unless it's a signal that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was listening?
What was the book hitting mercy? Probably
Cries at night. Oh, why? Because it goes around. If you should because I'm reading about Alma, Hakoil Nishma B'Yoyim Kabbalayla, the Galgal Chama. So the grinding of the sun. That's what it says. Hakoil Nishma V'Yirachamu Allah. So who should have rachmanos? The people in the Rebbeinu Shalom. But Al Pikein Einu Nachalo. So even though they're crying at night, which is a time where it would normally induce rachmanos, it did not. It did not. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Davracha Balayla, Shekol Aboicha Balayla, Balayla Shekol Aboicha Balayla, Hashemei Kailoi, Boicha Kenegdoi. No, I'm sorry, I skipped. It's over here. Davracha Balayla, Shekol Aboicha Balayla, even Kaichavim Umazolois Boicha Nimoy. It has an impact on all the big celestial beings. It has an impact on the big Zachen. It has huge impacts beyond what we just see. Anybody who hears it, it induces the other person to cry. Cries with it. Who was the Shchentosh Rabbi Gamliel. She was the neighbor of Gamliel. Shemeis B'nah, her child died, Rachman al-Tzlan. At night she would cry. Shama Rabbi Gamliel Kaila. So Rabbi Gamliel lived in the neighborhood, and he heard at night, he was trying to still learn, he's a woman crying. So he felt, neshama, Yiddish neshama is in pain, so obviously uvacha kenegda. It disturbed him from his learning, and he started crying. He couldn't concentrate because he felt her tsar. The next morning, his eyelashes were so wet that they didn't maintain their rigidity. They were flopped down, blocking his vision. Lamachar Kiriboy Talmidov, his Talmidim chapped what was going on over here. They moved her out of the neighborhood so she shouldn't disturb his learning. And it sounds a little ruthless, no? But that's what they did. If anybody was ever in a Hasidic place on Tisha B'Av night during Eicha and Kiddush, they throw around nuts. Do you know that they throw around nuts? It's like a night activity in camp. Why? Because the Rebbes used to have such pain from the Churban, contemplating the Churban, they would faint. So they had to distract the Rebbe from focusing. So they would throw things at him. but now it became a party. Yeah. V'demasal, I don't even know good. I don't know, but yeah, I'm told to do that though. V'demasal yechya, her tears are on her jaw. It's like a young almana who lost her young husband and she's crying for him. Shenemar Eli means cry with me. It's a lotion of kinos. The Vasula, like a Vasula Chagur Sak, who was dressed in sackcloth, Albal Nuhurel, because of her young husband. Hayu Tzarel Leroish. Her enemies were Leroish. Amrava, Amr Yechanan, Kol Ameter Yisrael, Nasaroish. Whenever somebody is causing harm to Klal Yisrael, they automatically rise to the top and become powerful. Shenemar, and that's actually in a way, it's out of the respect for Klal Yisrael. We don't fall into the hands of lowlifes. We fall into the hands of sophisticated nations. Shenemar, Kiloi Muaf. They won't. Our enemies will not be afraid. Lashar Mutzakla, to the enemy who's torturing us, they will not have any fatigue. Be'esa Rishon. At first, Hakel Arza Zvulun V'Arza Naftali. It'll be easy for them to capture Arza Zvulun Naftali V'Achron, and later on, as they are taking over our land, even Hich B'Derech Hayam Eva Yarden Galil Goyim. They're going to get us all. Amarav Amar B'Yochanan Kalamatzak Yisrael. Anybody who causes tsar to Yisrael, Einei Oyev. Hakadosh Baruch Hu gives them koyach that they don't fatigue and they keep on going. V'loy Aleichem Kol Oivei Derech. V'loy Aleichem Kol Oivei Derech. Not upon you will come anybody passing by. Amarav Amar B'Yochanan Nikan Lekuvlana Min HaTorah. What happened was the Navi says it's so bad, it shouldn't happen to you. So you see that when you are talking about tsaris, you should make a mention that it shouldn't happen to you. But there's actually two other pshatim that Rashi adds. So let's look at Rashi inside. It's towards the bottom of the first column. Lo aleichem navi hayim isnoidid al churban. The Navi was crying about the churban. We have to read the tzionim here for Rashi to make sense. Because ki loy ba. The Navi was talking about the future and crying about the churban because it didn't come yet. Ki loy ba lov tzara, and umisapra lacher, and he's telling over somebody else the tzaras. So he's bakluging zich as if it happened already, and he's saying that it happened. But the way he expressed it was, Yisrael. He was talking about a tzar that in the future was going to come on Klal Yisrael, but when he said it shouldn't be on you. So Kavana could mean that when you're talking about tzars, you should make sure to speak out nishkadach. Well, that was his nishkadach. Shouldn't be on us, right? So kemedumili novi hayumedaber connected b'minasha connected yudashvatim shelo higla l'buchaletzer. He was talking to them that did not go into Galus yet. But there's other pshatim that it means you're supposed to cry. When you have a problem, you should cry out and you should share it. Okay, so to Gemara weiter. Where are we up to? Over it is. Call over derech amar Rabam amarav asuni ka over aldas. You're mamish making me like you're treating me like I'm not. I made you Russia. What do you mean? What do I mean by that? It says that Kadosh Baruch Hu rained on Sodom, Gofers from Melach. Now Sodom were very bad. We live in Yerushalayim, but when Kadosh Baruch Hu was Machav Yerushalayim, what does it say? Mimorim Shalach Eish Batzmoisai V'Yadena. Meaning you treated us just like you treated the Anshe Sodom. Uchsiv Vayigdal Avoin Bas Ami Mechata Sodom. So his kasha was, you treating us just like Sodom. The punishment is like Sodom, but you kind that our Aveir was worse than Sodom. So you're telling me we did the worst Aveir than they did in Sodom, yet you're punishing me the same way you punish Sodom. What is there? Is there a nepotism here that you're treating us better because maybe we're Eden? Why would you treat us better? Amar Rav, Amar B'Yochanan, Mida Yisera Haisha B'Yerushalayim Shel Haisha B'Stayim. You know what? They were worse. I'm sorry, they were better. In Yerushalayim, they were better than they were in Sodom. So therefore, they weren't punished worse than Sodom. Even though they did a more affairs than Sodom, but they also did things better than Sodom. They had plenty of money. There was plenty of money in Sodom. Nevertheless, we had only the Evyon lo yichsika. They had no money. That's what they were punished for. They didn't help with only the Evyon. But the Ilu B'Shalayim ksiv yidei nashim rachmanius bishlo yaldeyim. So yes, we did worse averse than them, but we couldn't share. You know why? Because we didn't have money. So that evens out the score. So that's why we didn't get a worse punishment than Sidon. Sila kol abirai. Let me read the pasuk inside so I don't read it like a Chinaman. Sila kol abirai. All my giborim were smashed. Hashem bekirbi. Kara moyed. We learn from this. Tisha B'Av is the Yontif. We don't say Tisha B'Av. We don't say Tachdim. But Kara moyed means that Kadosh Baruch Hu made a deadline to kill us all. Lishbor b'chure gas dorach. You remember we learned from gas dorach means that when they lit up the heichal, it went up to Shemayim, and Hashem pushed it back down. Hashem pushed Tzoros. Hashem crushed us. Gas dorach Hashem lo psulas beis Yehuda. So Kadosh Baruch Hu was relatively harsh with us. So Sila kalabira Hashem bekirbi ka'adam sharmel chaveiroi nivshalam at peyasu. It's a lashon of Sela also, like I'm sorry, gas dorach is like we were crushed. We were a medbeya that got crushed. In other words, we became ois kapelich macher. Rashi says over here, Sela lashon mesila play mekala abirim all these strong people posla Kadosh Baruch Hu shem pasel das but also psulim mechavushim kemesila zu. We became posel like this mesila v'ainu damilu medbeya shenifsal ve'ein lo takana. A medbeya that became posel, it became no longer valid. That's what we were. We used to be a medbeya. We used to be something, and now we are nothing. Patzu alecha piem. The goyim would speak ill of us. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, b'shvil ma hiktim hey la'ayin. So even though Eicha follows the letter of the Aleph base, in this particular pasuk, I'm sorry, I think it's in the whole Eicha, the letter Pei comes before the letter Ayin, even though normally in the alphabet, the letter Ayin comes before the letter Pei. B'shvil miraglim she'armu b'fiyem mashalei ro b'neim. The Pei came before the Ayin. So they said Lashon Hara on Eretz Yisrael, things that weren't true, things that they didn't see with their eyes. Ami, Achlu, Lechem Hashem. And the Pashup shot is that the people who are eating Klal Yisrael are destroyers, are oppressors, were able to consume us like bread without much difficulty. Achlamu, Achlu, Lechem Hashem, Lekaro, Amar, Rav, Amar B'Yochanan, Kol Oichem L'Lachman Shel Yisrael, Toyim Tam Lechem. When people attack Klal Yisrael and they take away their stuff, they end up feeling geschmack. It benefits them. It's more geschmack to attack Klal Yisrael than anybody else. Does he give a better explanation as to what this means? That was the best I was able to find.
Idol worship is too much pleasure. Now they do that the bread they see can do instead of them the world.
Oh, so it's more geschmack. Okay. Meaning they were corrupt. As Rashi says, they're dayanim, the Yidden's dayanim, and the children, the people who teach the children, they became corrupt. So let's write Toyim Tam Lechem. So we did it already. Elo dayanim mata mishpat. They changed. They were corrupt. They changed the bit. They changed the halacha. Because of that, what caused that all of our possessions should be stolen by the goyim from our corrupt dayanim? That always the rabbunim. Or malam the tanoikos shoysin malachtam remoya. They made their malacha with conniving. I'm not sure exactly what they did wrong. It doesn't say. Zok Gemara. Mi monon. So Rashi explains what is the kasha of mi monon. The Rashi mi monon lahach malachim vejoitos the katani of Mishnah Elam Chelak. How does anybody know who has a Chelak Leilabah? Who was there? Who could say that over? Who could be so sure? Zok Gemara. You know who could tell us this? Amar Rashi Anshe Knesset Agdoila. The Anshe Knesset Agdoila. They told us. Amar Bidu Amarav. Bikshu oid limlos acher. They wanted to add somebody to the list of people who don't have a Chelak Leilabah. Shloim HaMelech. They wanted to say that Shloim HaMelech has no Chelak Leilabah. It sounds like almost like they wanted the Paskin to take away his Chelak Leilabah. Bo demus yukne shalovit. So David HaMelech came in front of the Bezdin, and stood right there. In other words, you're going to have the gall to condemn my son, not the Avodah in front of me. They didn't listen to him. Then the fire singed the benches that the Anshe Knesset Agdoila were sitting on. Didn't care. A Baskel came and said, Chazis ish mar b'malachtoi. Look at this person who's a Zoris. In other words, a very qualified employee who works hard and does not waste time. Lifnei misyach melochem yisyatse. Such a person will get a job working for the Trump administration. Bal yisyatse lifnei chasuchim. He's not going to get a job working for losers. Someone who's such a competent employee. So therefore, Mishahiktim Beisila Veisoi, Shloim HaMelech, who built the Beis HaMikdash before he built his own palace. Not only that, the Beis HaMikdash was so important to him, so he put in more labor on it, and he made sure to do it as quickly as possible. He built it in a mere 7 years. But his house, which wasn't so important to him, he didn't focus on so much. It took 13 years. He should sit in front of Malachim. He should be in a Mavah. He shouldn't sit with losers. And still, I mean, they had it out for Shlomo Melech. Yotza Baskal v'Amra Hama'amcha Yishalmena. Who do you think you are? You're in charge. Kima'asta, that you want to be moyis Shlomo from Olam Haba. Yi'ata Tivcha v'Loi. Hashem tells them, who do you think you are? You're going to make the decisions. Who goes to Olam Haba? Who not? Absolutely not. So this is a really crazy story. Like, what in the world is going on over here? They want to take away his Olam Haba. Why would they want to do that? It doesn't make any sense. So the Mesivta brings down some very interesting pshatim over here. He says, "L'chayr kasha, kejid you talk in chantek tesak doyle lo yishkichu, but the mustidukas of David Hamelach. Even if they wanted on their own to pass, and once David Hamelach shows up, but they're going to ignore that and to add insult to injury. V'loy be'eish yardim in Hashemayim, v'loy be'baskal v'shayna, sh'amar lem sh'lo yimnu shleima, bein hamalachim she'ein lam chelek lem haba." So Ubir ben Yoda, the ben Yoda answers very beautifully. Chantek tesak doyle yodu bevadai she'shleima melech hayat tzadik. Avada they knew Shlomo Melech was a tzaddik and the Baal Ruach HaKodesh and v'yesh lechelek lem haba. So what were they doing over here? They were concerned, Shanoshim Shutim, other people who didn't appreciate the greatness of Shlomo Melech, Yiru, they'll look in the pasuk and see it says in the pasuk, Shneimar boy vayas hara b'nei Hashem, and we know that it doesn't really mean Shlomo was a Rasha. It just meant that he was being called that way because of his wives, and he didn't stop his wives from doing those things. So the Hamonam will think Shushavel Malachim Achem, Shlomo was no different than the other Malachim that were Rishoim, Shas hara b'nei Hashem. V'lo yedu, they won't know. She'olav Nemar Kain Rak Mipnei Shaloi Micha B'Nishoisav She'avdo V'Yizara. They won't realize and understand that the reason why it says that in the pasuk about Shlomo is only because of his wives, but he was be'etzim a big tzaddik. So it's going to be a problem to the Hamoinam. So they bedavka did it because they wanted to create a spectacle. They wanted to list him as one of the people who don't know Olam Haba. So that this was reported in all the newspapers. Everybody was talking about this crazy spectacle. What happened? They don't want Chas V'Shalom people to say not nice things about Shlomo Melech. The people who darshan the hidden psukim said, everybody comes to Olam Haba. Shenemar li Gilad v'li Menashe v'Ephraim Moiz Roshi Yehuda Mechoykiki Moyav Sir Rachti Al Edom Ashlich Naali Olai Peleshes Hisroy Ali. So all of these malachim and all of these people that we said in the Mishnah aren't going to Olam Haba. They argue on the Mishnah and they'll go to Olam Haba. Zokmar Gilad li Gilad v'li Menashe, that's referring to Achov. Why Shenafal b'Ramois Gilad? Because he died in Ramois Gilad when they went to fight. Menashe Kemeshemoi. Menashe was the king. Menashe, he's going to go to Olam Haba. Ephraim Moiz Roshi, that's referring to Yeravam, the Osim Ephraim, because he came from Sheva Ephraim. Yehuda Mechoykiki, that's referring to Achitophel, because Achitophel came, the Kasi, Yehuda, he came from Sheva Yehuda. Moyav Sirachsi means Zegechazi, that's referring to Gechazi. Shalaka al Iske Rechitza, he died because of Rechitza, because he told him to go in the river. He told Naaman to go in the river and wash himself, and that took away the tzaras. Al Edom Ashach Nali, Zeh Doik HaDoimi, that's referring to Doik HaDoimi, it says Edom. Olai Paleshes Hisrayoi, Amu Malachi Asharis Lefnek, Lishboch Rebbeinu Shalom, Im Yovei David, the Hargus of Plish, if David came, and he was the one who killed Goliath, the Hirish Es Bonecha Gas, and he was the one who acquired gas on behalf of your children, Ma Ta'oisaloi. What are you going to do for him? In other words, These were all David's enemies. So he's going to go up to Olam Haba, and who is he going to be with? His enemies. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be a very uncomfortable situation. Amalan, don't worry about it. You just watch. I'm going to make it that David will become friendly with them, and they'll have a grand old time in Olam Haba together. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll do Mamshach tomorrow. These are mamish fascinating Gemaras.